Sink has been screwed down. You can see the silicon caulk oozing out around, which is fine. It'll be basically be pressed down by the next step, which is the hardy board, hardy plank, hardy backer, I guess they call it. Anyway, also in the interim, I finished up the drain. You can see the two sides of the sink, the P-trap, and all that. It's finished. I cut the piece of hardy backer with an outline for the sink. It's a good long piece, 5 feet long. Except I messed up back here and a piece broke off and so forth. I cut a piece in the wrong spot. Anyway, I'm going to just patch the back together. I need a hole in it anyway. So, but I can come up with hopefully a neat little idea on how to level the board. Eventually, we'll put thin set mortar between the hardy backer and the plywood, but in order to level it first, I just put a couple extra screws in here, and I'm able to adjust the height of these screws to get this board to level out. And it's pretty flat. The hardy backer is pretty flat, and it makes it a little easier to level. So let me finish. I got my hardy backer cut, fitted to the sink. And now I want to put another bead of silicone, this time on top of the sink rim, and it'll have to happen pretty quick. I'll put the silicone down, then I'll start laying putting the mortar, thin set mortar, on the plywood, and then I'll put the hardy backer on top of that, and then try to make sure everything's level. So I've applied the thin set mortar, and it's in place. Next thing I want to do is put a bead of silicon caulk on the top of the rim, and then we'll start laying the backer board on top of that. So now the bead of silicon is there on the rim, and I'm all ready to lay the hardy backer board in place. Putting the piece of backer board in place, trying to make sure I line it up as good as I can before I set it in place so it doesn't move the silicon. First piece. I got a couple little pieces. Making sure to line up the holes so that the faucet will fit through. I have a lot of the tile cut now. As you can see, there's some kind of intricate cuts necessary around the sink. And I did what I would call a bevel over here in the corners, instead of trying to radius it, because there's a bull nose. If you see that, there's a bull nose all around the rim. Hard to find those in any kind of a radius, so if not impossible to find. Just do a little section at a time, and just do a little section at a time. Set my tile down. Okay, I've laid the grout. I laid the tile and spaced it and everything. Spent a fair amount of time trying to get everything level as best I could, along with the help of my wife, and I think it looks decent. Of course, still got some tile left on that side and a bunch on that side, and of course the wall. But it's starting to take shape. Okay, I've got the middle section laid and grouted so that we could use, and I've also installed the faucet so we can get that going. Now I've cut a bunch of pieces here to finish the countertop. Now I've just got to mix some thin set mortar and lay that down as well. As I install more tile, I have a need to cut a hole for a receptacle. So as you can see, I've drilled 4 holes, and now I'm cutting with a jigsaw. The jigsaw has a diamond blade, and also this is the drill bit I've used. It's also a diamond blade of sorts, diamond hole cutter, 1/2 inch I think it was. And one thing I want to mention is when you're cutting the holes with the diamond bit, hole saw, use plenty of water. That seems to help with diamond. You can see I put the trim in right here. They were about just over 2 inch, I think, if I remember right. You see how they complement the bull nose up here pretty well. I had to put like a board here, try to keep these in place, keep them nice and straight, and I think it came out alright. Today I've made some cuts, some difficult cuts. I've got the pieces to go on top of the whole tile there and on the other side. I also made a special cutout in this piece here for the outlet over here, and it cut itself took probably a good hour. What I basically finished yesterday was up here and then over here. Today I'm going to try to finish the rest of it, which is under the range where the stove will go. And you notice I've got that little piece of wood there to help support the tile. I plan to use a bullnose tile down here, so it'll look, something like that. So I finally finished laying the tile. You can see the backsplash is finished. Backsplash all the way around here, pretty much, under the hood, and off to the right a little bit. So now I'm ready to grout. I got the grout mixed up and ready to put that in place. I'm spreading the grout using this trowel here, and I'm just getting it close. I do have a grout float, which is like a rubber pad on the bottom of a handle, and we'll get to that here in a moment. I just want to get this going here. Put a lot of extra on there because you'll see it's very easy to wipe off when you're done. Sometimes hard to get in that little corner down there, but that looks pretty good. I'm even getting underneath the cabinet there to help provide a seal. Yeah. All right, so here's the float, grout float. It's got a rubber pad, and you're just basically trying to push the grout into the little cracks, and you push it hard into the joint. Just try to work it in. Don't worry about extra. We'll clean that off eventually. Okay, the grout is pretty much finished as far as being put in, pressed into the joints. You can see it's still quite a mess, but I plan to clean that all up, making sure the joints are filled. I got me a big bucket of water and a sponge, and we'll clean that up. Being careful not to pull the grout out of the joint. Well, here it is, pretty much finished. The only thing I need to do now is to seal the grout. But alright, the project's finished. I'm excited. And I appreciate my wife, her input and suggestions and help along the way. She'd like to just make a few comments now.
As you can see, Mike did a really excellent job with this countertop and backsplash using the porcelain. It's nice and smooth. I love the texture. I also like the new depth of the sink. It's deeper than it was before. I also like the feature that the sink slips underneath of the countertop, so we don't have to worry about mold right here. I also like the way the backsplash comes around the back of the stove and looks uniform.